Welcome to this very brief interaction with our viewers, those who are watching us within the borders of Zambia, and of course those who are watching us outside the parameters of the borders of Zambia. And thank you very much for joining us and for supporting me in my discourse. I want to say that I wanted to discuss the drama that we saw yesterday, where some people held what they called a general conference for the Patriotic Front, an extraordinary general conference. Unfortunately, that matter has gone to court, where we as a party have been given an injunction to restrain Miles Walia Sampa from masquerading as a member of the Patriotic Front and also from masquerading as the president of the PF, and wish to state that since the matter is now in court, it will be sub judice, or in short, it will be contempt of court for me to divulge into the merits and demerits of this injunction. But I just want to advise our members that what happened yesterday is circus, or in other words, kubuta figaba ichababuta pamansansa. And I don't think any reasonable member of PF would be worried about what happened yesterday. The provision of our constitution in calling up for a general conference is very, very clear, that the Central Committee of the party and the president of the party, or indeed the acting president, are the only two institutions that can convene a general conference. Devoid of that, anybody who calls for a general conference is doing it outside the law, and whatever happens at that general conference is now and void. Our constitution gives powers to only the president and the Central Committee to convene and call for an extraordinary general conference, or indeed for the general conference. And there is no president of PF who convened a general conference yesterday, and there is no Central Committee that I know of which convened a general conference yesterday. In any case, there is a saying within the legal fraternity that he who goes to equity must come with clean hands. And if anybody goes to equity with dirty hands, then that party does not deserve any justice or hearing at all. But like I said, it is extremely difficult for me to divulge into the details pertaining those who called for the general conference yesterday, except to say that the provisions of our constitution clearly spells out who should convene a general conference. And there is nowhere in our statute where a member of Central Committee or an ordinary member of the party or a suspended member of the party can call for a general conference. that General Conference can just be referred to as Ukubuta Nangpamansansa. Article 50 of the PF Constitution deals with the National Council, its composition, and the quorum of the National Council. Because in calling for a General Conference, all those who indicate to the General Secretary or the Secretary General their intention to stand for the office of President must be referred to the National Council. And the National Council's composition, in accordance with Article 50 of the PF Constitution, states as follows. Article 50, Subarticle 1. The National Council of the party shall be composed as follows. It shall have members of the Central Committee, members of the National Assembly, provincial secretaries, district chairmen, district secretaries, district chairmen and committee members of the Women and Youth League, senior officers from the party national headquarters. And it goes on to say in Subarticle 2 that the quorum of the National Council shall be half of its membership. And Subarticle 3 states that there shall be committees of the National Council whose names, numbers, and function shall be determined by the National Council. That's the composition of the National Council. And there is no way that you can hold a General Conference without subjecting those who want to stand for the position of President to the National Council. And it is the National Council that refers those that want to stand as President to the General Conference with recommendation from the Central Committee. Therefore, what we saw yesterday, there was no mention of whether there was a National Council that convened. And to my knowledge, there is no National Council that convened, which makes yesterday's purported General Conference a circus. And when we were growing up in school, there used to be sketches performed by the drama club. And this can just be likened to those sketches that we used to watch at school, or a stand-up comedy. Election of the President of the party. Article 52 states, the President of the party shall be elected at the General Conference of the party. Subarticle 2 says, a candidate shall indicate to the Secretary General of the party his intention to stand for the office of President of the party not less than 1 day before the date of the General Conference. Subarticle 4 states that the Secretary General of the party shall submit the names or name of the candidate to the Central Committee for consideration. Where there is more than one candidate, the Central Committee may indicate support for one of the candidates. Subarticle 5 of Article 52 states that the Central Committee shall submit the names of the candidates or the candidate to the National Council for approval or disapproval. So the question that begs our mind, or that should be answered, is which National Council convened to approve those 6 who stood for the election of a party president? There was no National Council. Sub-Article 6 states, the person whose candidature for the office is approved by the National Council shall be eligible for the election of the general, shall be eligible for election at the General Conference for the office of the party president. This, I'm speaking in general, not specifically referring to the General Conference that was called, the purported General Conference that was called yesterday. Sub-article 7 states that a candidate whose candidate for the office of the president of the party is approved by the National Council shall lodge his nomination papers with the returning officer appointed by the Electoral Commission, supported by 20 delegates from each of the provinces of the Republic of Zambia attending the General Conference. Now, when you look at these provisions under Article 52, none of them were adhered to by the so-called General Conference, which was convened yesterday. When we go to Article 56 of our Constitution, Article 56 of our Constitution, where it talks about the office of the Secretary General of the party, you find that under D of Article 56, it says the job of the Secretary General is, one of the functions of the Secretary General is to maintain a register of party membership, and is the only officer who can confirm who are members of the party and who are office bearers of the party. Mind you, before you go to the General Conference, there must be confirmation of who are true members of the party and true office bearers of the party. What we saw yesterday, there was no confirmation of the register by the Secretary General. And who was the Secretary General at that meeting? There was none. We only saw that one was appointed after the after the purported elections. When you look at the provision of Article 61, or before we go to Article 61, we go to Article 58. Article 58 talks about who summons the General Conference. Like I've stated, that it is only the President and the Central Committee who are empowered to summon the General Conference. When you go to Article 58K, powers and functions of the Central Committee: summoning regular or extraordinary meetings of the National Council and the General Conference. So this power of summoning the General Conference or the National Council is the responsibility of the Central Committee. So which Central Committee sanctioned the calling of what we saw yesterday? None. When you go to Article 61, like I said, I will be very brief. Article 61 also deals with the powers and function of the President of the party. And under D, it says convening meetings of the Central Committee and National Council. So only the President can convene a Central Committee and the National Council. So since there was no President who convened the Central Committee or the National Council preceding the General Conference, it goes to show that that General Conference was illegal. When you go to Article 64 of our Constitution, it talks about appointment of members of the Electoral Commission. For the purpose of party election, there shall be an Electoral Commission which shall be responsible for laying down the regulations, rules, and procedures relating to party elections and shall be responsible for orderly conduct and supervision of the party elections. There was no electoral commission, which electoral commission should be appointed by the Central Committee. We have in place already a party election commission. Our party election commission did not attend any general conference because there was nobody who summoned the general conference. So everything that was done was illegal. When you look at the provisions of Article 67, Article 67 deals with the when you go to Article 69, Article 69 deals with party regulations and standing orders. It says regulations and standing orders of the party made by the Central Committee shall be enforced, meanwhile subject to ratification by the National Council. Now, when we are going to the General Conference, there are standing orders that will be made, which will be followed at the General Conference. So these are subject to ratification by the National Council. So there was no National Council called to ratify any standing orders pertaining to the standing orders that were going to be followed at the General Conference. So it makes that gathering illegal. Article 69, Article 72, when we go to Article 72, Article 73, I think when you go to the General Conference, provisions under the national organs of the party, general organs of the party, under Article 67, it says the General Conference shall be held in accordance with provision of Article 43 of the Constitution of the party and instructions issued by Central Committee regarding the date, place, and time and procedures that are going to be followed. The Central Committee never issued any of these instructions, making that General Conference or extraordinary General Conference illegal. Article 69, under the national organs, says the General Conference shall be attended by all members of the National Council, be at least 600 delegates from each province selected in accordance with the rules made by the Central Committee. We have 10 provinces, so we expected to have 6,000 delegates according to the Constitution. The people you saw, those youths who were picked from stations and markets, and some of them coming from the UPND, did not meet the 6,000 delegates that should come from the provinces. When you go to Article 72, General Conference functions, the chairman of the National Council shall be the chairman of the General Conference held during the term of office, who should be elected by the National Council among themselves, members of the National Council. Who chaired that General Conference? We saw the person who chaired was, who opened it and chaired was Mr. Ground. Mr. Ground doesn't hold any party portfolio in the in the Patriotic Front. The agenda, Article 73, the agenda for the General Conference shall be prepared by the Central Committee, approved by the National Council, and adopted by the General Conference. Did you see any adoption of the agenda which came from the which came from the Central Committee, approved by the National Council? The answer is no. Article 75, the National Council. It says the delegates shall, Article 76B says the delegates shall elect a chairman of the National Council who shall continue to be the chairman till another chairman is elected at the next council. This procedure was not followed in what we saw yesterday. The quorum of the National Council shall be 2/3 of its members in attendance and shall be compulsory except with prior express permission of the Secretary General. In short, countrymen and women, what we saw yesterday was nowhere near any provision of the PF Constitution. And that's why I said in my opening remarks that he who goes to equity must come with clean hands. You cannot claim and take your friends to court that they are not following the Constitution when you come to abrogate the same Constitution with impunity and expect that justice will be done. So in short, without going into details, I want to assure all our members that what was held yesterday at the Mulungushi International Conference was basically Ukubuta Pamansansa, where people went to play stand-up comedy, and was I really don't know what I can express. I would have gone much into details, but the problem is that this matter is now in court. Therefore, I cannot go to talk about specific individuals and what they really did yesterday, but just to remind our members to be calm until the final outcome of the matter that is in court. And I want to thank the courts for giving us, as Patriotic Front, an injunction restraining our brother Mao Sampa from purporting to be a member of the PF and also from purporting to be president of the Patriotic Front. We shall speak more about this once the matter is dealt with in court. That is why this morning I could not go live at 10 o'clock. We wanted to give the due process of the law a chance to determine our application for an injunction. So I cannot dwell so much into the details of this matter because it will be sub judice. So my coming to address our followers and our supporters, our party members, and of course the general public was just to assure them that what happened yesterday is nowhere near the provision of our Constitution. And therefore, what really happened yesterday, we leave it to the courts to determine. But thanks to the judge for giving us an injunction to restrain Mao Sampa from causing damage, more damage to the Patriotic Front. I appeal to our members to be calm until this issue is resolved in the courts of law. Long live PF. And I want to thank all of you for watching this address. Thank you very much, and long live PF. Thank you.